The economy is changing at high speed. And we're talking about, what are you going to do? I hear so many people saying, well, what's the Fed going to do? What's Janet Yellen, Secretary of Treasury, going to do? The issue right now is, what are you going to do? And as you know, there's two Americas today, those with money and those without. And the number without are a lot. But those with money, like a friend of mine just sold his business. I think he put almost $1 billion in his pocket. He doesn't know where to hide the money, Andy. You know, Kim and I have lots of cash also. We have to run around looking for places to stay under the $250,000 debt limit. And then there's the masses of people with nothing. And if a regional bank goes down, the bank on your corner goes down, that real estate's no good, employees get fired and all this.
I had met a guy named R. Buckminster Fuller, guy that invented the geodesic dome and all that. And so all through my life, I studied Bucky Fuller, you know, and he got to me. He says, what does God want you to do? And he got to me, if you know what I mean. And I said, well, we don't teach money at school, and I think I do understand about money now. And with that point, I started to teach entrepreneurship for free in Hawaii, because I wasn't doing it for me this time. I was doing it for what Fuller called the universe, to give back your gift. That teaching in Hawaii wound up to be Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Our schools teach us not to make mistakes. And what Fuller says, we learn by mistakes. Like a baby can't learn to walk unless they fall down. So the reason many people fail in life is because they're a fear of failing. And I was just teaching games via games, encouraging people to make mistakes and how to learn from your mistakes. So that was the process. So it wasn't about me getting smarter, making them smarter. It was basically teaching them how to make mistakes and get the principle. So my biggest lessons was learning from people I thought were smarter than me, like the accountants and the attorneys. And they turned out to be crooks.
I find it interesting that the Federal Reserve is lending money to the FDIC. And if you realize, if you take away the commercial banks and say there's roughly 9 trillion deposits in the regional banks, how is it that 128 billion or even 173 billion, if you take the loan that they were given by the Fed loaning money to the FDIC is kind of crazy to me. But even if you take that, how the hell does that backstop $9 trillion in deposits? It doesn't. And so this FDIC illusion of safety is something that I think people will realize is nothing more than the Federal Reserve standing behind them with the printing press, waiting to destroy the value of the dollar even further if we see more and more of these regional banks fail, which I expect they will.
There's a lot of rumor about the Fed coin and CBDC, central bank digital currency. There's also Bitcoin and now Fed Now. So the question is, what is money and what does it mean? And anytime there's a big change, there's always the rumor goes up and speculation and panic and all this. And it's for good reason. Throughout history, who controls the money controls the world. And since 1944, America has controlled the money, with the US dollar being the reserve currency of the world, which caused America to boom. But it also caused many problems. And when we lose our reserve currency status, which started in 1944, the question is, what happens after that?
At the end of 2022, there was a report that just came out by the Federal Reserve who said that 722 banks were technically insolvent at the end of 2022. And that means that they had at least 50% of their capital was underwater. And these are called unrealized losses, whereby, of course, the rising interest rates have created significant strain on this. But if they were to get a run on the deposits, where the depositors request redemption, the only thing that they would have been able to do at this point, or any of these 722 banks would be able to do, would be to sell those assets that are underwater. And that's why we saw in 36 hours it put Silicon Valley Bank just like that out of business. So there's a lot of these banks that are underwater technically. So what do? The Fed won't get tough on inflation. The Fed has no desire to be written about in history books for blowing up the entire American way of life. They created it. They pointed to a villain with Putin as being the cause of inflation, when indeed that is not the cause of inflation. Inflation is an increase in the money supply always, and coupled with the decrease in production. That is the last 3 years in this country. No production, increase in the money supply. There's your inflation. And, Putin and the war in the Ukraine may be slightly exacerbated price inflation, but has nothing to do with it. So the premise is the Fed isn't going to get tough on inflation, but realizes we are in a bad place. The U.S. has been holding most of the world's gold because at the end of World War II, we told the governments of the world, hey, we'll hold your gold and we will guarantee that we will pay you $35 an ounce for it whenever you want. Right. So what a lot of these countries did is they would give us their gold, but we would pay them $35 an ounce for it. They would take the proceeds and put it into treasuries. And those treasuries would yield a return on a non-interest bearing asset. And heck, they could always return it for $35 an ounce anyway. That was until 1971. So all I can simply say to you is this: the banks are in trouble. We're going to increase the tremendous amount of inflation that's already into the system. We're going to increase it to bail out those banks that are systemically too big to fail. And they've already told us it won't be via taxpayer injections or bailouts. They've told us that FDIC only has 0.03% backing, so that won't work. So they'll print money to bail those banks out. But everyone's going to flood into the commercial banks. And then they are ripe for whatever they have in mind. If they let one of them fail, just one, everyone will panic and embrace the new CBDC currency, which we have been told by the Bank of International Settlements that everyone must have. All countries that are part of that network, the BIS network, has to have an operational CBDC by 2025. Who knows? Maybe we'll have one much sooner than that, the way that this is all going, but this is very frightening.
My question is this. Some of the people listening right now say, oh, that'll never happen. But is it possible that people will be driving wheelbarrows pretty soon full of cash that has been devalued because they print too much money?
What makes the dollar the world reserve amongst many other things, the biggest thing is the fact that Saudi Arabia and OPEC price oil in dollars. If that ends, and it looks like it's going to, based upon all of the moves and pieces that are being put into place, bang, like that, there's your tsunami, there's your 30-foot tidal wave of dollars that hit our shore. And when that happens, that becomes